done everything they possibly can. Well, not everything they possibly can. They've done a lot to try and break the economy to get inflation to come down. But we just continue to surge on. So, Brian, what are some things that you're seeing, or what's your opinion on why we're not seeing that decrease that they anticipated or that they hoped for?
The Fed doesn't have a lot of tools. There's certain things they can do. They can cut the federal funds rate, which is different than the mortgage rate. So the Fed actually controls the rate at which different banks lend money to each other. Mm-hmm. And that kind of trickles down into like personal loan rates and credit cards and all that and savings and stuff. But that's what they're trying to do when they're increasing the rates, is just kind of like slow down the economy. Not so much that we push it into a recession, but enough that
there's that word again.
Slows down
that word
spending.
That only comes into play when people want it to come into play, because by definition, we've been through 2 or 3 of those in the last 24 months.
I don't know if,
not full blown, but based off of what the clear definition is of what a recession is. It's 2 down quarters.
That word was thrown
Did we
around.
have 2 down quarters?
We did. We had it. So the second half of 2023 and the second half of 2022 were both down.
Okay.
So we had a down, then we had a flat, call it up, and then another down.
Okay, I'm going to table that topic, and we're going to keep going with the original question, which is what's causing the inflation. So I did hear an interesting interview on NPR earlier this week with an economist, and he was saying that there's certain costs are just not really impacted by interest rates.
Right.
So like the cost of healthcare, childcare, gasoline, not really, but actually I read one article from Reuters.com this week that said gasoline and shelter were the more than half of the increase in the consumer price index. Gasoline and shelter.
Shelter makes sense. We know that.
Which we're we'll talk about shelter. That's our expertise. But the gasoline, I'm thinking about it. Like, I mean, I was paying like $3 a gallon for gas like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It really hasn't gone up in price that much.
No, $3.70, $3.80 is what I'm paying now. And
Like
I have to get the mid-grade.
Like what did a sandwich cost at the deli 30 years ago? Like $4, and now
I got a
it's
sandwich
like
from a local deli here in Guilford yesterday, and it was $15. So
Yeah.
I probably could have got that same grind
30
for
years ago. It
$9.99.
was probably $5 ago.
Yeah.
Pizza.
I
You're
used
paying 30, 40, 50 bucks now.
There was
back then, like 10 bucks.
Yeah, there was a deli I used to go to in Old Lyme across from A&P back in the day with coffees.
Oh, Andy's. Oh, no, Coffee's Market.
Coffees
Market, yeah.
Not the one by the lake. The one that was across by the A&P. It's a Dunkin' Donuts
that
now.
was just Coffees, and then the one down on...
There was 2 coffees. There was that one. I used to be able to get it, and I remember I would go there in 2005, like every day for lunch. I could get a bagel sandwich full of turkey with fixins and veggies and everything on it. $3.50, Chaz. I used to pay $3.50 for a bagel sandwich with turkey.
Now, and you're dating yourself too by saying 30 years ago too. So.
Well, 2005. That's 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
My first year in the mortgage business.
There you go.
I was new. I couldn't afford $5 for sandwich.
But still, $3.50 for a coffee and a sandwich. Like I would take that all day.
But so the cost of a sandwich has like tripled basically. But has the cost of gas tripled? No. The gas is like price of gas is like relatively the same. But
it's interesting because we've seen more of it. Gas has been one of the few, what do you want to call it, industries that where when we do see a huge increase, right, and we're paying like $4.25, $4.30 a gallon, that never lasts. And yes, it comes back down to that $3.70, $3.80. It doesn't go back down to the $3 mark. But with so many other things like lumber, like the price of lumber has come down, but it hasn't come down anywhere close to what we've seen pre-pandemic, right? Yeah. But gas is one of those that fluctuates. And don't worry, we're heading into summer. Gas prices are going to go up because they know that we're going to be using a lot more of it.
Close as 5, but you go out west, I mean, you're paying $8.
Oh yeah, they're paying $7, $8. But here in Connecticut, but I think that's a really interesting point is how gas has probably the most fluctuation on a short-term basis out of all the industries that they look at.
Yeah,
definitely.
They say, I think they've increased the domestic production of oil, and I guess there's more oil out there than I thought. I mean, I would have expected that we'd be running out of oil and the prices would be going up, but I guess there's still quite a bit of it left out there.
Yeah, our Earth always produces it.
I heard
it ain't going nowhere.
I heard this stat. It was probably 5-10 years ago. I heard this stat. We're going to go off on one of our little tangents here. That we have enough oil reserves. I think we keep like 20 or 30 years, like as a reserve as a country, just in case, like, World War III happens, something crazy.
Right.
That if we started tapping into that and selling it back to ourselves, 50 cents on the dollar compared to what we're getting it from overseas, that would be enough to fund a renewable energy source project. I don't know if that is still accurate, but that was like some information that was going around 10, 15 years ago. It's like, why don't we just start using all reserves? But they're just being cautious because they're like, well, what if we end up needing those reserves?
True.
So back and forth.
This is really interesting. It just reminded me of So there's this famous economist. I just had to look it up. 1798. There was this guy Thomas Robert Malthus. He famously predicted that the short-term gains and improved living standards wouldn't be sustainable because there's no way that we as a society could produce enough food to keep up with the population growth.
Okay.
So this was like over 200 years ago. This guy basically predicted at the rate that the human population was growing, there's no way we could make enough food for everybody. But what happened? Like, we have plenty of food. Like,
well,
I mean,
we call it food. Air quotes for you 94 Niners out there listening, right? We're going to call it food that's on some of those shelves. But
yeah, I'm not going to get into that topic.
Well, what's happened is that we've experienced an exponential increase in our ability to more efficiently produce food in a way that he just didn't imagine would be possible.
Right.
That like one guy in Indiana with a tractor could produce truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of grain. Like he just didn't.
He never met the
that.
McDonald's family.
You know, he didn't.
Yeah, he never saw them coming.
So I mean, it's similar. It's kind of what happened with oil too. Like people were like, "Oh, we're gonna run out of oil," but like we're just getting better and better at like getting this stuff out of the ground.
Right.
Well, and then you're seeing like the hybrid cars too. Like my wife has a hybrid car, so her old SUV, same model, but you know this one's just I don't know 10 years newer or whatever it is. She was getting like 17, 18 miles to the gallon. Now she's got the hybrid. She's getting like 35 miles to a gallon because it's splitting its fuel burning with the batteries as well.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. Yeah, that has, and we got people are getting solar panels. We're getting very sidetracked, but we could geek out on this all day. So back to shelter. So shelter isn't a big part of inflation. I've said this before on the show. What the Federal Reserve could do is they could start buying mortgages.
Right.
And they did it during COVID to stimulate the housing market. And they did it after 2008 to help avoid a recession. They could buy mortgages. So if shelter is one of the biggest impacts in inflation, which it was in the beginning, in the beginning, like all kinds of stuff was causing inflation, but now shelter is like one of the number one things. They could keep rates high on like credit cards and personal loans and stuff like that to kind of keep the economy from growing too fast. Start buying mortgage-backed securities, and that would cause mortgage rates to drop. It would cause shelter prices to probably go down. You get more people to sell their house, all these people that don't want to sell their house because they're stuck in a 3% interest rate. So anybody at the Federal Reserve, if you're listening over here at Real Estate Radio, we're hoping you start buying some mortgage-backed securities. We'll see if my prediction comes true.
We'll see, because I mean it's affecting everyone.